Welcome, everybody, to Practical Psychology Podcast, another episode. My name is Joseph Wong. I'm one of the co hosts. Today, I'm very happy to have Adam and Jenny here joining us. Adam and Jenny are both mental health counselors located in beautiful Vancouver, BC, in Canada. And Adam is also going back and forth from Taiwan to Vancouver. And Jenny is originally from Beijing and she has been in the episode before. Welcome, Adam and Jenny.
Thanks, Joseph.
Thank you, Joseph.
So, Adam, how about you tell us a little bit about what is your connection to Taiwan?
Well, quickly, very briefly, my connection is right here. So I have a beautiful wife, a beautiful family over there. So we spend a lot of time there, but we also spend a lot of time in Vancouver. So my life involves a little bit of traveling, but really it involves kind of living between these two worlds, the East and West, I guess, for lack of a better description. And so that has kind of brought me closer to Jenny here because we're talking about how to operate within these two worlds.
Taiwan and here is very different here. How about for Jenny here? What is your connection to Beijing?
Beijing. Okay. So Beijing is my home city. I was born and raised in Beijing and for almost 2 decades. And then I came to Canada, Vancouver, and I went to Vancouver for university. So yeah, so I have seen the cultural of both worlds, both in Beijing and Vancouver, and I have all my extended family in Beijing. I go back to my hometown every year just for short vacations. I have never worked in Beijing, even though I went to school there.
Adam, for you, how long have you lived in Taiwan?
It's been a few years now, but I've also
Mm.
lived in Guangzhou and Shanghai. So got a lot of this Eastern experience, shall we say.
So to
Mhm.
summarize, how many years in Canada and how many years overseas?
Well, I don't want to tell you how many years in Canada, Joseph, because that'll give away some information I don't want to give away. I lived overseas. It's probably been about a decade. It's about a quarter of my life, I guess. Almost,
Yeah.
almost a quarter of my life over there.
Okay, so it looks like here we get them. You know Canada in and out, and also have a lot of overseas experience. And then Jenny, you were born and raised there in Beijing. You know Beijing really well as an expert.
Mhm.
So let's talk about because you are both in Canada right now, doing counseling in a very diverse culture. And how's the cultural elements apply in the counseling setting that you observe? Maybe Adam, you start first.
Yeah, thanks, Joseph. So what's interesting is where you say, like, Adam, you're an expert on Canada. I mean, one thing that I've found since I started having more contact with more Asian people is that the things that they want to know about Canada or their experiences here are obviously very different than mine. So, like we might still, we might go to the same Tim Hortons, we might like the same hockey team eventually, or Celine Dion or something like that. But our experiences are very different. And that was also very true when I was in China, because a lot of people would, like local people, would sort of like push back on my experiences and say things like, that doesn't happen. That doesn't happen in China. And it's like, it doesn't happen to you. But I think if you had a face like this, I think your experience might be a little bit different. So I guess where Jenny and I have found a lot of common ground is that there is no like monolithic Canadian experience and Chinese experience. Really, it's just this relational space that mediated by culture, of course, that has all kinds of interesting facets, all kind of interesting parts that we can explore.
Mhm.
And then it's great that you mentioned about that in counseling psychology, we call it the intersectionality. About all these elements can blend into a totally different recipe for each individual. How about for you, Jenny?
Okay, I think Adam has brought up a great point, and I just want to add my observation in terms of counseling because I have taken a lot of clients who are from collective societies too. And one thing I notice about counseling is that for those who are from collective society, um, they tend to really value the expertise of the client. So a lot of the time, their trust on the counselor depends on their title and also their credentials. On the other hand, when it comes to speaking to um, clients from individual cultures and Canadian clients, they really value the relationship and the rapport here. And that is what's more important. They are trusting the counselor because they feel heard.
Interesting here. Jenny, did you realize or observe what type of authority, status, or titles that they value more to make that
Uh, they,
decision?
They value more about someone who's from top university, for example, like those universities that have higher, like lower acceptance rate and more competitive. If they have someone who's graduating from prestigious university, or if the person is a doctor's graduate versus like bachelor's to graduate or a master's to graduate, they would value it more. And experience doesn't really matter to them for some reason.
No, that's very interesting. How about for
Yeah.
Adam? What is your observation and your experience in clinical?
I think people here, of course they value degrees and they value authority, but it's just not valued as much. Like Jenny mentioned, it's about a rapport. You can and really at the end of the day, you can either build a rapport or you can't. So, you can have this relationship that's based, you can have your credentials in the background, and that probably helps to get your foot in the door, but that's not going to carry you very far. You really need to develop a relationship. And that nobody has ever asked me what school I went to.
Yeah. And Adam, here you mentioned about the experience in Vancouver.
Hmm.
What is your estimation or your guess if you were to do some counseling in Taiwan?
Yeah. So obviously there's licensing issues that we have explored and we have we continue to explore, but let's put it that way. My expectation is that it would be in some ways like so for example, I live in Taipei, big city. And so my expectation would be that a lot of the people there would be like a lot of people in other big cities. So before I mentioned like Guangzhou and Shanghai, Shanghai to a Canadian like me, like going to a city like that, which is basically the population of Canada, in a city. It just it's mind blowing. But that's what a city is. You become acculturated. You start to interact more with other people. So the short answer to your question is basically, I think just the fact that a lot of people would be urban and professional, and let's face it, like speak English pretty well. It would probably be fairly similar, but I think those elements that Jenny just mentioned, the respect for authority and the sort of the hierarchical orientation would be a little bit different. I think it would just take like a little bit of time to get used to that, but I think I could work under those conditions.
Adam, thank you. Jenny, how about for you from your perspective? Because you go back and forth Beijing to here.
Okay, so first of all, the title counselor is actually unregulated in mainland China. And I believe this is one of the reasons why a lot of clients from China are looking for higher education and higher credentials because the title counselor itself is unregulated in China. And personally, for me, after graduation, I am looking to promote mental health in a way of facilitating workshops. And I'm not planning to become a counselor in China in short term. And perhaps that's something I would consider for the long term. And since I'm already working at the clinic, I can see a lot of clients online virtually, and I'm going to continue doing that for a while.
Thank you, Jenny. It's very interesting because when I talk to some of the industry associates or um, China is a really growing market. And in
Mhm.
fact, sometimes they will fly some professionals in, for example, autism, ADHD, or even counselors to go to China to give a workshops to their staff and training. So
Mhm.
definitely a lot of potential to grow there.
Right. There's a high potential market there.
So kind of go back to you here. And when in the clinical practice here, let's talk about the East and West, how that mixture here.
Yeah, yeah. So okay, so I'll just give you a little bit of background on me again. Like my best friend here is, if you look at him, he is he's got a face like many people in Asia, but like his mother always tells, he doesn't speak Chinese, for example. So his mother always like points at me and says like, you should be more like him. So all of our mutual friends always laugh and say that like he's whiter than me, basically. And I am more Chinese than him. So I mean, that element kind of shows up in the counseling space because really the only people that I've had the interactions with are, like second generation CBC, like Canadian born Chinese. I've never really had any interaction with, yeah, like somebody who was born in China, for example. What I do have, though, is more like anecdotal evidence just from people in my life over there and their experience with the mental health system.
And Adam, do you speak Chinese yourself?
I do, yeah, I do.
And Chinese means, is it Mandarin?
Mandarin, yeah, yeah, yeah.
He
And have you
can
tried any
understand some
Mandarin
Chinese too.
counseling with any Mandarin clients so far?
Not Mandarin speaking, not Mandarin speaking. So actually, Jenny was so gracious as to
Mm.
practice with me,
Yay.
and actually that really helped because it really helped refine some goals and what I want to do. I think it's good to know. It's good to have like the experience to know how to go through some of the counseling, some of the housekeeping, for example. Because I mean, we know that a lot of housekeeping is really just sort of like making space for somebody to express themselves. So you might think from a language point of view, you might not need a lot. Oh, just to say like, oh, oh, 那继续说，继续讲. But like when you read the informed consent, for example, that kind of requires a little bit more practice,
Mhm.
put it that way.
Even
But, mm,
Even I find it challenging when
right.
going over the informed consent with Adam because in Mandarin language, I find it because I'm more familiar with Mandarin language. Once one word changes, the whole meaning changes. And
Mm.
when it comes to informed consent, I have never spoke in the same way in Mandarin. So all I do is casual speaking, day-to-day speaking. Yeah.
Right. Right. So in that process, I kind of realized that, maybe this isn't my lane. I have family in Taiwan. They've always kind of pushed me like, oh, you should be doing more, like just pure Chinese. But the more I think about it, it just goes back to how we started this episode, just talking about that space where East has met West already now for hundreds of years. So, there's all these relationships and all of these different idioms and all of these different, behaviors. And that's the kind of space where I think I can do the most good instead of like competing with native speakers, for example.
And how about for you, Jenny? Have you seen any Mandarin speaking clients that speaking Mandarin in a session?
I have seen a handful of Mandarin speaking clients for now. And honestly, for myself, I find it easier with English speaking clients. For Mandarin speaking clients, I notice a pattern. Some clients come here to look for a fast solution to the problem they already have. And so this is not the point of the counseling. So this is at least not the main focus of counseling. At first, there's going to be a slow progress, and some of them drop out because they cannot stand the slow progress when it comes to counseling. They're looking for direct advice and direct direction right away.
Oh, so Jenny, you're mentioning about they're looking for direct consultation and advice.
Right, right. And a lot of the time, we don't know what the solution is until the third or fourth session, unless we know the client really well, and then we can guide them.
So Jenny, when you're in that space doing Mandarin speaking in a
Mhm.
session, what else are the differences between your other English speaking only clients?
Oh, yes, there's other differences. For majority of the Mandarin speaking client, especially if they're parents, their problem or their challenge is more relational focused, and sometimes they express discontent to a decision of their relative or their friend or their daughter or their son, and they are here for counseling, yet not the person that they are dissatisfied with.
Okay, Adam and Jenny,
Sounded like
since you both speak Mandarin, how about we do a little bit Mandarin here in the podcast? I'm the only one who can, but I can understand and listen.
好呀，没问题。
好，可以。
Okay, so let's go to you, Jenny, here first. Jenny, you have a quote. Isn't it funny how day by day nothing changes? But when you look back, everything is different. Tell us more about that quote, your favorite quote.
I'm gonna reply in Mandarin if that's okay.
Yeah, Mandarin.
首先我发现，在我的实习当中，每天好像都一样，每天我都见一两个客人，然后参加看似同样的培训，但是每天我并没有看到我自己的提高，但回过头来想到我从9月份到现在的这个历程，我发现就是我比那时候自信了很多，并且就是我从不论是客人还是我的督导耳中听到的一些反馈呢，都有说我在进步，所以我看到的是两个不同的我。我还记得我的督导在第一次团体督导的时候，那个时候是 onboarding 还没有正式的开始咨询。那个时候我的督导就给学生们嗯写了两个写了两边的 list，然后左边呢是我们现在的我们，到右边是未来的我们，就是毕业之后我们是什么样的，然后中间会有一个 gap，然后我督导问我们说，我们要怎么样去满足中间的 gap，然后到达我们未来想要达到的一个目标。然后现在我对这个问题有了一个更深刻的回答，就是做好每一天，不要过度的担忧，做好每一天的工作，认真的对待每一个客人，通过时间的堆积，并且通过客户量的堆积，自然就会有提升，自然会到达我们想要到达的这个位置。
And thank you about this here, Jenny. And how about for Adam? What is your takeaway
Uh,
or your thoughts?
Can I summarize? Maybe summarize Jenny's story there.
Yeah.
这好好学习，天天向上。
How do you translate it in English?
Good study, day up. No, I mean, I think, no, Jenny's point was about you can't always see
嗯
the little changes, right? So I mean that is why, having a great supervisor and great peers around you is so important. Because I could not imagine doing this process if it was just me. Because I think, yeah, again, like you think like, okay, I'm reading this book, I'm watching the video, I'm trying to do the thing with the person, and then, it didn't work. Or maybe the next day it did work. Oh, that's great. I'm the best counselor. There's never been a better counselor than me. and then the next day it doesn't work again. So it's really hard to know what path you're on if you don't have someone to hold the mirror up to you and give you the feedback.
Yeah. So now let's go to you, Adam. Adam, one of your
Yeah.
favorite quote here is the curious paradox
Mm,
is that when I accept myself just as I am,
mm.
then I can change by Carl Rogers. Tell us more about it.
Yeah. Right. So anybody watching who knows anything about counseling psychology probably knows who Carl Rogers is. Um, I actually find with this quote, it was down to like top three because he's got some really good quotes, right? Very, very quotable guy. And yeah, the idea that it's kind of connected to what Jenny was just saying that if we meet people every day that just like they want to change, but they can't really, they don't know why they can't get it. And a lot of situations is they just really aren't accepting X, Y, and Z. And so, this is true for a lot of our clients, but I think it's also true for us as well. So from Jenny's point of view, it's like, you can't really see all of the progress, and yet it's happening. You just have to accept that, trust the process. I guess that's the connection between both of our quotes.
And this is something I like to share with the client. So change happens in a dynamic process rather than linear. There are going
Right.
to see up and downs during the process. There are days where like
Mm.
everything that falls apart seems like everything's falling
Mm.
apart again. But overall, I have seen a few clients for a few months, and overall, they are making positive progress compared to the time when they first entered into counseling therapy. And as practicum student, we see that in ourselves too. If we are to think back for Adam like 3 months ago compared to you now, what differences do you
Yeah.
see?
Well, for me, it's 0 to 1, right? That's the hardest step, is to go
Mhm.
from 0 to 1. After that, going from 1 to 2 or 2 to 4, and like up. That's it's really just that's easy, but 0 to 1 is the hardest.
It's kind of like business building. 0 to 1 is always the hardest.
Yeah, yeah, or it's a business building, or it's writing a song or writing a movie or something, whatever the idea is. Actually doing it is the hardest thing. Once you do it once, okay, now you have some data, so you can do it again, do it better, and do it better, and do it better. But to actually to do the first thing, it's kind of another paradox there, because so many of our clients struggle with perfectionism. So they never want to do anything because they're afraid that if whatever I'm going to do, it's just not going to be good enough. So why
And
would I even bother, instead of like just doing it?
right, and here's something also very typical in clients who struggle with perfectionism. They have that black or white thinking. Once they do something,
Mm.
when something goes outside of their expectation, they want to like give up everything. And that's where, as counselors, um, we really need to intervene and help them overcome that thinking process. There's always that gray area, and change happens from time to time. There's going to be up and downs.
Right.
And then Amir, I remember you also play some music in the band, and I want you to
Oh
tell
yeah,
more
yeah.
more about it because I have a living experience with some sort of music therapy.
Okay.
When I was working in the facility with people with severe psychiatric disorders, they
Okay.
have many good programs. One of the favorite program
Mm.
is there's a gentleman who come in and play the guitar and sing songs for 1 hour. It's always the
Huh.
most popular group
Sure.
event. Tell us more about your music playing.
Well, again, I mean, this is, I'm not going to give my age away, but I mean, music has been my life for most of my life. It certainly, yeah, it comes in handy because it opens a lot of doors. So I can imagine in that situation, it would open a lot of doors too. I actually sat here yesterday in this very seat and was trying to record Instagram videos of me like playing some music. I was thinking about some songs that I loved growing up, that had a really good message, to me, and so like to me now as a, let's say, more experienced, more mature guy, that message, I don't really need that anymore. But I think like a lot of the, like positive things. So I wanted to share that, but I couldn't get the lighting right. And, I could sing one
Hey, how about
key
this way
off.
here, Adam? Also
Mm,
Jenny, because I know Jenny, you do a lot of mindfulness exercise with a client. For
Mhm.
example, they live on the stream, and
mhm,
then Adam, maybe you can
mhm.
play some guitar, some soothing chords in the background.
I don't know if anyone's ever accused me of being soothing. I think it's, I
Yeah.
don't think anyone's going to hear my music and think, hey, I'm just going to calm down now.
Okay, okay. Because when we go
But
to
yeah, I'll
YouTube,
definitely try.
those mindfulness videos, they have some
Right.
calming music, but okay, your
Yeah.
music is different.
I mean, what I really want is, I want, because I think back to my own experience and certain messages. So, I mean, I think that that's the one good thing about music is it can be soothing. It can be a tool to calm people down. It can be a tool to bring people together. It can be a tool to for people to express themselves in therapy. But it can also be a tool to get a message across. And so,
Mm.
whatever that message is, that, keep going, or, like the sun will come out tomorrow, like these kind of things. The messages that when you're really struggling in life, it just you really could probably use to hear.
Adam, do you know how to play the music? You raise me up. That's one of my favorite one.
Oh, yeah, I mean, I do, yeah. But that's a hard one to say because that one really does go up, right? Let me off.
So
Okay,
I have a
that's good.
question here, okay, Adam and Jenny. Because I know Jenny, you do the cognitive processing therapy for PTSD symptoms, and one of them is to read out loud about the alternative message because they have the narrative that get them stuck, and
Mhm.
to do that. And then going back to you, Adam, in psychology, we use something to soothe people when they're
Mhm.
too escalated. At the same time, for some clients who are too numb, we want to arouse them, bring it up.
Sure.
So even though your music is a little bit more stimulating in nature,
Right.
so it will still work.
Right. For the right person, the tolerance, get them the tolerance level. That's that. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's good. That's good. I can definitely do
Maybe we can
that.
combine Jenny, training with the client and then with your background playing those stimulating music to raise the mood.
Simulate songs. Yeah. Oh yeah. And then to go back to the culture thing, we can make them Chinese songs too. That could be fun.
Do
Oh,
you
I've
sing in
never
Chinese?
thought of that. Me?
Yeah, are you,
I
Jenny, and Adam?
I think he asked you, Jenny. Yeah, can you sing a Chinese song?
Not really. I like to listen to Chinese song. However,
Right.
I am quite off key. I'm not sure about singing Chinese song during the sessions.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, something to work towards.
Mm. I know how to play the piano though.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Okay. So I think part two of
Jenny,
this episode needs to be more of a jam.
tell us more about piano here, Jenny.
I started learning piano when I was 6 years old. Yeah, and my parents forced me to do that.
Mm,
And I gave up at the age of 8.
mm,
Yeah. I still know how to play, yet because I had such a bad impression on piano and my parents forced me so much, I kind of lost the passion, yet I
mhm.
still had the skill. I'm still thankful in the end.
Yeah. It's very interesting because for some therapy sessions,
Mhm.
the therapist will ask the client to choose some of the songs
Mhm.
and some of the narrative sort of therapy.
Mhm.
So that can be very impactful for both of you.
Right. Right. And as Jenny is saying that, it makes me think I also took piano lessons as a kid, and the teacher was fine. So I still play the piano today. I love playing the piano. The teacher was fine, but like I lived in the countryside in Ontario, and so it wasn't a great match. You know what I mean? And there was no other piano teacher around. Like this was my option was to go to this lady, and I wanted to play like pop songs, and she wanted me to study other things, and I now thinking back on that, I realized that's a pretty similar to the therapeutic relationship. Like if you meet somebody and it just doesn't work. You're just not a good match for each other. That's fine and that's normal, like now we're in an age where you can meet another person very easily. So don't try to force it, let's just say
All
like, hey, this
right.
isn't working.
Yeah. That circles back to counseling too. Like when I
Right.
talk about piano and you talk about like playing guitar, it
Mm,
sounds like you are willing to learn it yourself. For me, like I didn't have the passion back then, and my
right.
parents want me to learn it instead of me wanting it. And
Right.
that circles back to the core concept of autonomy when it comes to
Mm,
counseling. The
right.
client have to want it themselves. It cannot come from someone else.
Oh, Adam and Jenny. There's a lot here, obviously, to continue to discuss here. We have to talk more about in the next episode.
Sure.
But here, if you were to just summarize in a few sentences to tell the viewer what you want them to know for next time, what would that be?
I'll go first here. Good, study, day up. I believe that is the that's the takeaway.
Yeah. Oh.
And trust the process.
Yeah, yeah. Trust the process.
And so, Adam and Jenny, if any of the viewers, fellow clinicians want to contact you, we'll put their contact in the description here so people can contact you directly. Okay.
Okay, sounds good.
Great.
And today is very happy to have everybody here, and I look forward to speaking with you again.
Thank you.